Coach Lonnie Almeida, welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation today.
I'm excited too. Thanks for having me.
I have so many things that I'm excited to learn from you today. Oftentimes, I think the best place to start these conversations is perhaps the most obvious spot. And as my listeners know, Coach, I do a ton of research on every single guest that I've had since 2018. And during my time researching you and watching videos on YouTube and listening to podcasts that you've been featured on, I've also talked with some people on your staff, as well as some other folks that you've brought into your program. And I've noticed a few common threads that I'd like to pull on to start the show today. The first thread was just how genuine, easy to talk to, and how loving you are as a leader and a coach. From a human relational standpoint, it's pretty clear and obvious that you're one of the best in the business. The second common thread people said was this: she knows how to build a program, create culture, and provide a family like atmosphere. I think oftentimes we see coaches who are really good at the X's and O's of their sport, but they fail in the more important side of things, which is relationships and building a program that sustains. So I'm so eager to hear from you. We could probably talk for a whole hour about this. But what are the
Mhm.
steps in your mind or the key ingredients in creating an amazing program like the one you've built at FSU?
Mhm. Well, thank you for the kind words and kind of cool when you get to do some background stuff and talk to people and then I guess talk to the one that's leading it, right? So it's just so cool when you start to look at the fact that, I'm the CFO of softball, the CEO of softball. I'm it for Florida State right now. And it took me a long time to realize like everything falls back on me. You always know it when you become head coach, but essentially um how your team lives, like how you do things, it just falls back on the head coach in every aspect. And I think most young coaches always ask, what are the words of wisdom on that side of it? And I'm like, man, just be you, because everything comes back to you and how you handle things and how you do things. So it's funny when you talk about Kaner, like he one day said, and he's incredibly amazing. And he's like, man, excellence, you're chasing excellence. And like, that always made me pretty nervous because I am not excellent. Like I struggled in school. I struggled in things like when you think of excellence, it's like straight A's and this and that. But like, I started to realize like, I am who I am and I'm going to be excellent at being me, and that like, I have a lot of faults, but when you're genuine with that part of it and you allow people to have their faults too, and you're just all here for the right reason, which is just the growth of people through sport, because we love sport, but the growth of people, it seems to, all come together. So I'm very lucky to be surrounded by incredible people that have amazing visions. And I just feel like over time, I'm just like, man, like I am who I am. I'm going to do what I do. And I'm very lucky to be able to do it.
That's such a great test of a phenomenal coach in my eyes is when you get this cup of ego and instead of drinking it, you pass it to somebody else. And what you just did right there was, hey, I have a lot of great people around me. And some of the best coaches that I've been around, that's the first thing that they do. Sometimes it's annoying because it's like, just take the credit. I'm trying to give you a
Yeah.
compliment. But it's so great time and time again. You see the best of the best, just like yourself. It's, hey, thank you, but I wouldn't be here without X, Y, or
Mhm.
Z. Was there a time in your career, whether it's at Florida State or UNLV, where there was a little bit of a breakthrough for you? And what I mean by breakthrough was there a time when you were vulnerable or you kind of let people know, hey, I'm struggling, or you kind of opened the gates a little bit? And was there a moment where it's like, oh, wow, they saw you differently and now we have a connection versus like, coach is kind of unreachable. I can't talk to her. She doesn't mess up. Is there a moment or a story that pops in your mind, perhaps?
Ugh. Um, Probably not stories or moments. I'm pretty vulnerable all the time. I will say that I think my genuine self is just growth mindset. My whole life I've been like that. I just want to go and what are other people doing that makes them successful? So um, I've been so lucky. Travis Wilson, another coach here, he has a friend that works at Jimmy John's. I think 2018, 2019, we went to the headquarters like, man, how does Jimmy John's run? Like leadership is everywhere and success is everywhere. It doesn't have to be in sport only. And when we realize that we are in a people business, everything is business, it's people business, it's people driven. So, to go sit at Jimmy John's and talk to the people like, how do you make a sandwich so popular and people want it? and how do creative minds keep going, and what does that look like? And the one thing I took away from there is, they have clipboards in every part. So they have like a kitchen in the middle, and they have an entryway, and there's clipboards, and people sign up for making sure those areas are clean or presentable. And I'm like, I mean, that's just straight leadership with your organization. Everyone's in charge of something, And so it's like you walk away from a sandwich company, not just a sandwich company, big company, but you walk away from that and you're like, "Man, like, that's cool leadership. How do we bring that here for accountability? Because accountability is so big. So then we got into talking here about who's cleaning our dugouts, who's doing that. Like, we should be doing that. This is our place. And so I think there's just moments throughout the time that my growth mindset is like, get outside the box, learn from other people. Again, we're going to go like DJ, like Brian Kane's so valuable to me because he's in so many conversations with so many different amazing people from, in the ring MMA to Fuddruckers, to all these people. I'm like, how do they do it? To doctors, how do they do it? And so I think that's been my foundation, is just that growth mindset. So I'm always asking questions. I'm always trying to figure out how to be a little bit better, but still keeping the thing. Still keeping, we still have to play a good game of catch here. We still have to have some good athletes to play at a high level. The thing, but then how do we sprinkle in that extra 20% that can keep us with our edge and keep growing?
I love it. I love that it starts from the top. I like this concept of first we need, it's kind of these three M's. First, we need to make our core values and make what's above the line below the line. Then we need to manage it. So when somebody steps out, what do we
Mhm.
do and how do we praise it up and below? And then the third one is probably the most important, and it's model. We need to model
Mhm.
the behavior that we want to see more of. And it starts from the top. I heard you on a podcast say something that I can't get out of my head. Super cool. Something along the lines of you're walking a dog, and the dog, something about the leash and the dog
Mhm.
walk. That's a cool analogy, so I don't butcher it. Take it from me.
Yeah. One of our boosters, I was having dinner with them, and he was talking about, he was in the Secret Service, and the dogs, like, they what goes down the leash comes up the leash, right? So, and I grew up around animals a lot. I rode horses, and it's so true. Animals can feel fear. They can feel when you're uncomfortable. They can feel those things. And I just really took that to heart. Like, these dogs have such a sense, like your team has such a sense. Like, if you're feeling those nerves or you're feeling those things and you get a little bit tighter, they're going to play tighter. So what goes down the leash comes back up the leash, and is always stuck with me.
So is that something, coach, you're intentionally thinking about every day? It's like, how do I want to show up? Because there's days when you probably don't feel like it. There's days when you got stuff going on in your personal life. My question would be,
Mhm.
how do you make sure you keep the main thing the main thing? What does that look like? Do you have a
Yeah.
process? Because I'm sure there are days that are really hard.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a mantra here, to live GATE, and GATE stands for, the acronym is give your all to the team every day. And we have a gate that is, we walk through to the field, and we talk a lot about GATE mindset. And to me, my vision is for these kids, when they come into this program, to leave with the ability to live GATE in life. So that's their business, that's their relationship, that's their family, that's their husbands, that's their wives. Like, can you walk into your house and give your all to your team, your family? Can you go into a business office, open the door, and give your all to team, to the work company? Like, can you separate life, right? The ones that can do that can, one, flip your mindset, and you can be a happier human, or two, be able to separate some of the stuff that's going on to be productive, and then pick it up and deal with it later. So if we can learn that here with sport and all the great things we get to do here, it's a contributing factor to how I can live in life and be a happier human. And so if I'm going to talk about GATE mindset, and I want you to leave this program with a GATE mindset, then I've got to live GATE mindset. So, if I'm going to walk in and I had a bad budget meeting, or something great on the other side too. It goes both ways. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing, right? You could be elated about scoring 100 on the test, and you walk in here and you're high, with smiles and laughter, but then the next day you're not, like, so can you give 100% of whatever you have? So if you're feeling 40%, give me 100% of that 40%. If you're feeling 80%, give me 100 of that 80. And when you're 100, make sure that your days that you're not, you're as consistent as you can be walking through the gate and bringing that. So yeah, so I have to check myself. And there's days when we gate at the beginning of practice, and man, I'm feeling it today, you guys. And I'll let you know, like, I'm feeling it. I don't feel as good or whatever. When I can verbalize that, then it frees them up to verbalize things too. And then when someone could go around like, oh man, like, I want to give a shout out. I got, my teammate got a 80 on an accounting test. That's awesome. I want to shout out, like, I'm not feeling so good. Mental health is there today. Man, I'm gonna love you up. Let's get after practice today, right? So we create this opportunity to be real. And I'm just as much a part of that. Coaches, managers, everyone that's a part of us is a part of that mindset. So yeah. And then I think we award gate shirts, every now and then. So if someone's like really been consistent with their approach every day and they've lived that gate mindset and they give, then we'll award a gate shirt. And it just feels good to know that, like, how Waycaser is one of them that just won one, and she tore ACL her freshman year, and she's kind of been up and down. Just that's a lot to deal with as a freshman coming in, and now she's just been so consistent every day, smile on her face, love being here, like so cool, like gate mindset. You guys see this? Like, she's earned this over time. Had to go through the valleys to get to the peaks to understand how to be consistent, and to award that and talk about that, I think is a cool vision.
Oh, that's so cool. And the mental performance coach in me, I like this idea of having these distinct moments where you either flip the switch or you get into game mode. So whether it's going from student to athlete or from coach to parent, whatever it is, having those moments. Coach Jim Slosnig on the podcast a couple weeks ago talked about that as well. Like, you can't take that home with you, because they're at home with you. They probably don't want to hear about all that, or to a certain
Yeah.
extent. So creating those moments, and for me, it's like before I get into my house, I take one long inhale and exhale, and then I get into dad mode, and that's something that's super helpful. So cool to hear that from both of you guys. I love this idea.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep going a little bit on some of these mental performance practices. I would call that a mental performance practice. Another one that I heard a couple years ago watching you guys on TV, and it's been so cool because it keeps popping up more and more in my conversations, is this idea of tell the truth Tuesdays. I've heard
Mm.
about it. Can you teach me about it?
Yeah. So again, going back to all these cool opportunities. So Kaner came in a couple years ago, and we watched the Blue Angels, and it's like, you can YouTube the Blue Angels there, and it's like, I want to say a 1970 clip. It's like pretty old. And it's just talking about their process and their practices, and they go up and they run a route. That's probably not what the Blue Angels call it, but I would say they're running around up and down. They come down, they get around a table, and they debrief it. And the whole thing with the debriefing is like, man, I could have hit the left turn a little bit better. I could have been cleaner, and I could have communicated, a little earlier that I was going to take a left. That, this is horrible in airplane terms probably, but the thought is, I'm going to recognize that I could have done something better. I'm going to verbalize it to everybody, and then I'm going to say, man, but I'm so glad to be here. So I failed. So here's Janai Kerr sitting in a meeting, and we're watching video, and she didn't get behind a fly ball, and then she threw it to third, and it was a little wide. Man, you guys, like, I could have got behind the ball a little bit better and had a crisper throw. So Jason E could have actually like picked it and tagged it. But I am so happy to be here, and I'm going to get better. Right. So she recognizes a failure. She verbalizes it to everybody, and she lets you know that, man, I'm a player and I'm in your hip pocket. I'm going to get better. So when we play a weekend series and then we pull some clips up on Tuesday before practice, we give people in the room the opportunity to be vulnerable, usually your upperclassmen, because now your rookies are like, oh, it's okay to fail. Yeah, it's going to be a long season of that, and then hopefully that gets onto the field. So now we make a mistake, and then we can eye up our teammates and be like, man, I can be better and I'll do better, instead of putting your head down. And then, you have to wait a whole week to get better. It's like, start to be in those moments. So I think it just opens up accountability. It opens up the ability to fail forward, and then team cohesion, because now you're hearing from people that, and I think of me as a coach too, when I know that I hear them saying that, then I'm like, oh, they do see it. Because how many times as coaches are we like, do this, do this, do this, like, but when they start to say it, you're like, oh, they know it. That's fine. Like, I'll keep working with them and try to keep them making better. And then we hope as the season goes along, you get to the end of the season and they're starting to make those adjustments on their own.
A couple weeks ago, I had Captain George Dom on my podcast, and he is a former Blue Angels captain, flew a Top Gun, really high
Mhm.
naval officer, and he talked about this process. And I talked a little bit about you guys at Florida State and how they do this, and he was very interested to see how it looks in the sports setting. And what I think is so cool about this, and Kaner talks about this a lot, is this idea of creating an environment where it's not so much coach fed, but it's player led. And that sounds really cool. The rhyme sounds cool. It's like, oh, I would like to do that. But this
Yeah.
right here is, in my opinion, the strategy to help you do that. Because
Yeah.
what's the opposite side? You watch film, everybody shuts up, and you say you did this wrong, you did this wrong, and it's just all Coach Almeida talking, 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 talking. Where now you get a chance to you sit back and let you guys tell me what you see. So talk to me a little bit more about coach led player, or sorry, coach fed player led, and how that lines up with you guys.
Yeah, yeah. I think that so my beliefs are, I want a very transformational program. Like I want you to come in as a freshman and, kind of be that bright-eyed, quiet kid to like leaving, shaking hands, communicating, leading as a senior, right? So like that whole transformation of those 4 years, like it's just so important to me because I think when you get comfortable with who you are, you can play your sport at a high level. But I'm in a transactional world. So I have to live at the crossroads of transformation and transaction, right? Like if I don't win games, like I am out. I could be the coolest human ever, but I am out. I'm here to win games, right? So I got to live there. So how do I create moments for those transformational moments to happen? And if we're going to be player led, it takes a lot. When people like put a captaincy on someone or they talk about leadership or, you're putting someone up there, you look at a lot of grown humans and it is hard for grown humans to do that. And we have a lot of experience of life under our belts. And these are kids at 18, 19, 20. And we're like, man, lead our team. I mean, leadership is really, really tough to do. It is not um kumbaya. It is not, I'm going to have the best friends on the team. It is the person that's going to hold the line, the person that's comfortable being in those moments. And so if I believe in player led, then I've got to feed it daily and get them comfortable with making a lot of mistakes and opening their mouths and saying things. And then I have the ability to come in like, ooh, let's rethink that, how we say it. Let's rethink of how people would hear that. Let's talk about what your body language is like right now. It's a lot of self-discovery in leading. And I know it because I've been there, right? I have to sit in front of people when we do well, and I have to sit in front of people when we don't do well. I have to answer to questions. It's really hard to do. And now I'm asking a 19-year-old kid to do that. So I think player led is an everyday thing. I think this part of Tell the Truth Tuesdays is a big part of it. Honestly, we may do the first one and maybe one person speaks. Maybe by the second or third one, two people are speaking, right? I don't push the buttons. Anyone want to speak to it? No? Okay, good. Let's move on. Second round, maybe someone will speak. Now, third round, I'm hoping like maybe a month in, now all of a sudden everyone's speaking. So I don't think it's a forced thing when you're leading a team to lead your program, right? Like I think it's keep sprinkling in every day, keep sprinkling leadership moments, keep sprinkling growth moments to give them confidence to now like, oh, I know like living above the line. I know what that means for us. And I'm able to hold that because I love you as teammates and I want our program to be great. Not I'm calling you out. I'm calling you up to the standard. I'm not calling you out. I'm not trying to lose and point fingers. I'm trying to make sure that we get better and see that vision. So I think player led goes so deep. And you're right. Coach fed player led. It sounds good. We could put it on a slogan. You could put it on letterhead, but it is a daily action. And it's probably, if you believe in the transformational side as a coach, it's a daily conversation with a lot of people, a lot of back, conversations, right? Like after practices, I'll have someone come up, let's talk about practice. Let's talk about why I said that in body, like just a lot of that when you're talking about transformation. It is a lot of putting your arms around it, right? If you're straight transaction, it's like, man, hit your cutoff. You didn't hit your cutoff, you're out, someone else is in, right? It's just straight, like do your job and that's it. But if you're trying to live in both, I think player led is super cool. It just takes a lot of time and energy to be intentional.
I love where this conversation's going. I've never heard a coach say I would live at the crossroads of the transactional and transformational. Once you said it on another podcast, I was like, oh yeah, bingo, absolutely. Because what could happen is
Mhm.
transformational is kind of it's the new buzzword. It sounds great, of course. This is where we want to be. It's you're a
Mhm.
transformational coach if you have a coach or a player come back to you 4 years from now and say, hey, you changed my life. You go, hey, that's transformational. Transactional is,
Yeah.
hey, all it is wins and losses. But I appreciate your honesty because at the end of the day, your contract is probably going to be determined a lot of the time by the win and loss record. Can you double
Yeah.
click on that and just go a little deeper about what it means to be at the crossroads there? I think a lot of coaches hear that, Coach Lonnie, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's where I feel like I'm right there too."
Yeah. So I think the hard part we have in females sometimes is we can ooze transformational quite a bit, right? Like I think it's just in our DNA generally as females. I know we have a big spectrum here, but generally, like, we have the caring DNA, we have the kumbaya DNA. We are pretty creative in that sense. We care, how people respond to failure. Where the male DNA sometimes can be like, man, like they can go at it and they can be over it in a second, right? Like, so I get a lot of people, but humans are humans, and there's a huge spectrum on that side. So I just think that we sometimes struggle with the transactional side of it. And we sometimes get frustrated with the transactional side of it. And I think that's where I had to really learn, like, business is business.
Mm.
And as cutthroat as it can be, it is the way the world turns. And if I'm going to keep pushing for this game to be great, I'm going to keep putting on the line, like, I have to turn over business. But I decided what fills my bucket is the transformational side. So I love when kids grow, and I love loving on their growth via sport. So I think for me, I found living in that crossroads can fill my bucket as a coach, but also continue to check myself, like, why are we not winning? I need to get better at winning. I need better talent here. I need better strategy. I need better game planning. I need better preparation. Like, go back to Lonnie, like, get your transactional stuff in line to fill the bucket of what you love to fill. So if you as a coach can find out what fills your bucket, you can start to be your authentic self, because that is your guidelines to how you want to run your program. But you can't go extremely one way or the other, because something's going to suffer in the meantime. And so I think for me, just knowing that I love that, and that's what keeps me going. Sometimes I don't even know what our record is. I don't know what the ERA is. I know nothing on transactional numbers. I don't
Wow.
care,
Wow.
because I am so connected to the process piece, because that is my bucket filler. Like, how are you handling these moments? I am here for you. Do I have to come back at the 30,000 foot sometimes and be like, okay, why are we 10-4 right now? Right? Like, what could we have done better? Yes. But daily, there's times you can call me and ask me, and I wouldn't even know, because I just
Wow.
know that we need better leadership, or we need, you know what I mean? Like, I can feel that with our team, because that is the part. The other part of that is I have different mindsets on my staff. Not everyone's like me. So I have some very transactional high D coaches and they keep me in line to that true north of where we need to go in the transactional transformational side. And you could call Travis and what's our record, what's our ER? He would know it in a second. Awesome. He is in my circle. We are going to get ourselves back in line. So surrounding people that are driven to what you want, but maybe not exactly like you, can keep you in the guardrails of where you want to go.
Great advice. You said something earlier about failing forward. And one of the things I love about talking and working with softball and baseball players is that the best ones, I believe, they have a tremendous relationship with failure. I mean, if you base your sport on the numbers, you guys are getting out and striking out more than you're actually getting hits and getting on base. So it's a great life skill to have, is to have this constant facing of failure. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard this, but Roger Federer, one of the greatest three tennis players of all time, he actually lost 46% of his points, yet won 80% of his matches. Lost
Mhm.
46% of his points, yet won 80% of his matches. So he was facing failure all the time, became one of the top three, arguably. So oftentimes we have this great process, whether it's how we see pitches or preparing for a game. The process is there, but sometimes the result isn't quite where we want it to be. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, for you as a coach, how do you approach this in the sport of softball? How do you approach failure? What's this conversation like? How do you create a positive relationship with failure for you and your team?
Yeah. I think really getting clear on the process, really having good clarity to you individually. So DJ, you're my pitcher, right? So we're going to sit down, which I'm going to do here in the next hour, sit down with our pitchers. And I want them to tell me who they are and where they fit in our program. And I'm going to tell them who I think they are and where they fit in our program, right? Do we align, right? So do we have really good clarity on what you bring to us, DJ, right? You're going to go out and pitch, and you throw your number one pitch is this, your number two pitch is this, you're working on this one. I'm going to get better on that one. And we're in line. We have good clarity. So you have no angst, right? Or no anxiousness on what does the coach think, right? No,
Uh-huh.
like we are in line, and we're going to keep continuing to build you. So clarity is huge to me on that side of it. Um, I think, as we move forward, what is your process, and what is when you're not meeting that line, right? So let's just say process. One of my pitchers, she's like 65 to 70% first pitch strikes, in a ball game. Like she hammers the zone. All of a sudden we're in the 50s. Like, so regardless if she's winning or losing, all of a sudden the process of her is not, we're not getting to the standard of what the consistency is of her. So like we can go back. So it's so easy to look at wins and losses,
Right.
but if you're going to get clarity on who you are and what you do every day, then you start to become more consistent. And the minute we start to go down a little bit, we can identify and get back to the consistency. Do we always want to continue to grow? Yes, we're going to add things to sprinkle in. But if we ride the lines of wins and losses, you can win and lose you can lose and play amazing. You can win and be horrible, right? But if you have this like consistent line of who you are and then who we are as a team. So my job is to line up 21 players, identify how each player is going to contribute to them being the best of themselves, and then them fitting into the puzzle of this team being really good. And then I've got to line in team 42 right now to be the best moving forward in the season. So I think when I'm really clear with them as a team and I'm really clear with them individually, they feel like they have a place on the team and they're going to continue to work on building them. So I think the clarity and the honesty is huge. I think sometimes when you're just like, oh man, you've got to hit better. Well, what is hitting better for you? Some kids hit better is take big swings because I want 10 bombs from you this season. Sometimes it's not 10 bombs. I just need good at bats. So if you strike out with like a 12 pitch at bat, high five it. That's awesome, right? Because your process is going to be different than someone else's process. So clearing that up, I think helps the team and them understand that they are a piece of this puzzle that's moving the team forward.
So
That
clarity
can get
first.
so deep.
Oh, I
It's
love it
so
though.
deep. I mean.
That's phenomenal. So first of all, I think the lesson there first is create clarity. Let each kid
Yeah.
know. Let them first. What you said was brilliant. Let them first tell you, coach, what they think their role
Yeah.
is, and if you guys agree, it's shake hands. I'm glad we're on the same page. But then you talk second.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around. And then another piece of it, if
Yeah.
I'm picking up kind of what you're putting down here, is what is your process, and do we have one? So it's a quality at bat. It's things like that. I think what happens
Yeah.
sometimes so often is we just look at the result, the strikeout, the interception, the whatever it is, the error, and it's like it was a bad play, and we just paint things as
Yeah.
good or bad. I had the Minnesota Timberwolves sports psychologist on my podcast about a month ago, and he talked about this idea. He works a lot of NFL quarterbacks, and one of the quarterbacks came in. He's like, "Yeah, it was just a bad play," and he threw this interception. He goes, "Well, let's rewind this." He goes, did you get the play right? Yeah, I got the play right. Did you get the huddle right? Did you say it right to everybody? Yeah, I got it right. When you got up to the line, did you read the defense? Yeah, I did." And he goes through little step by step by step, all the way to the drop back. Did you go through your reads? Yes, yes, yes. Did you throw it to the right person? Yes. And then he goes, you missed the mark by 6 inches. It got deflected. Boom. So all these things we did right. And then all
Yeah.
you're basing it off of is it got tipped and landed in in the opposition's hands. So I think that's a part of it too, is let's not just paint it good or bad. Let's break it into these little pieces to
Yeah.
determine the process. Do you jive with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's 100%. I work with the pitchers here, and I think that's a big thing is you can leave a game and be like, man, like that was horrible. I gave up 6 runs. Or you could leave the game and be like, man, they're a really good hitting team, right? It's just like how you want to look at it. So like if you know you're executing and you're in it and you're executing the pitches you want to execute and you're like, man, they got to a good one, then another good one. Oh, they took advantage of, like, wow, good team. And you walk off and you're ready for the next day to get after it. Or I give up runs, I'm horrible. And now we have to rebuild the confidence piece to that. So I think it's how you perceive your process and your execution is big of how you're going to respond the next time you get out. So we're walking into a ballpark and, as hitters, you're already failing. Like, how is our best foot forward failing? What does that look like for us? And what does success look like? I think another thing, DJ, that's huge is like everyone like throws this out like, oh man, go have fun. Like, what is fun? Like, let's describe fun, right? Like, cause like, I think it's the easiest thing for a lot of people to do, and a lot of parents to do too, is like when they see their, kids like, oh man, can we just go have fun like we did in the old days? Like when you were a kid, yeah, for sure it was fun, but we're leveling up. So fun changes because there is more expectation on it and you ask for it. It's just like a video game. Level 3 is super fun because you can eat everything up. You get to level 12 and you have to have a little more strategy, right? So it's the same thing here. And I think we need to define fun. Tell me what fun is, because you're getting around a lot of other people that are pretty good at what they do. And now fun is few and far between if you're just doing wins and losses. Like we have to have fun during the process of the game. And we have to have fun in that moment of me versus you. That's fun. Bases loaded, games on the line. I'm pitching, you're hitting. I'm in this moment. So fun.
Oh, that's cool.
When I can have pitchers at the World Series and they're looking around and people are yelling at them and there's a big moment, be like, isn't this fun?
Cool.
Like, I don't know how many times I walk out there to the pitcher, like, man, this is so much fun right now, you guys. Like, you wanted this. How fun is this? I don't know if we're
You
going to
you
win or
you go
lose
out
this
there, you
moment.
go out there and say that? You go up to
Oh,
the circle and say that?
yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Yeah. Because it is. It's what you dream of, right? And if you talk about the GOAT or hero moments back in the day, there's one camera on the pitcher and one camera on the hitter, right? Like they're both courageous enough to be in those moments. And as kids, you dream of those moments. Of course, like you can see the walk-off hit or the strikeout, but the fact that you're in it is super cool. And now at this point, you just trust, man, like all your preparation, let's go to it. Like me versus you. I don't know who's going to win or lose, but me versus you in the moment versus like, ah, dang it, I want the outcome. So I think that is what we're training for is like, I want to be in those moments and I want to trust when I execute the pitch or I get the swing or I get the ground ball, like I'm going to completely trust all my training into it and get after it and have some fun in that moment. So I think defining fun is really, really important.
What a great question to ask, and just to get on the same page with what your team thinks. Because maybe as a coach out there, maybe you have a definite definition of fun, and the kids have something
Yeah.
that's completely different, and we have some misalignment there. I love that idea of Carrie Walsh Jennings was on my podcast yesterday, the greatest female American volleyball player of all time, and she talked about dancing in the moment. And it was such a cool. I was like, "What do you
Yeah.
mean dancing in the moment?" She said, "I want to enjoy every single moment." I said, "Well, how do you do that?" She said, "When I was playing, there would be moments where it would be this. I would call it a competitive moment, not a big moment because there's a perspective there. And she put her hand on her heart and she would feel her heartbeat. And then a smile would come to her face. And it was this moment. It gives me chills just telling you this, coach, that it would bring
Yeah.
this moment of like, this is why. And because of that, years later, she can go back and remember it and tell the story and re-feel those
Mhm.
feels because she knew what it was like when she was playing
Yeah.
against China and the score was tied, hand on the heart. I got a smile on my face. It's like, this is the moment. This is it. And
Yeah.
I think as coaches and team consultants, it's probably easier to be like, you got to do this, and it's hard when you're a kid, you're an athlete,
Yeah.
you're in the moment. I get it, but if you have the ability to slow the game down, take a pause, look around you, my God, years
Mhm.
later, you're gonna look back and go, that was so stinking fun.
Yeah. 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 And I think we talk about that a lot. Like so the beginning of this year, we did vision boards. Every player did a vision board. And, we're old school. Everyone's got a notebook. In the front of their notebook is a vision of what they see for themselves at the end of the season. And so, my vision for them on my vision board is like, I want a dog pile for you. Like, I want that moment for you. And I'm going to work my tail off for that moment. Freshmen, you have no idea what that's like. You don't know what we're trying to hunt right now. Returners, you know what we're trying to hunt right now, right? And how hard that's going to be. But to me, this is fun, like super fun. We're going to put in a lot of time, a lot of work. We're going to go through a lot of conversation. We're going to cry. We're going to sweat. We're going to bleed. You know what I mean? Like so fun in this moment in June. It's so far away. In today's world of like want it right now, man, it's a long time away. So we get in practice, gets a little like tough, bring them together. This is the moment. This is what we have to work through because when we get in these moments, you're going to look at each other and be like, man, it's so cool right now. Right. So I think that's super cool. She was connected with that. And I think when you get teammates to be connected with that, like her and teammates are doing that together,
You
like
got
that's a
something
whole nother
powerful.
level that the
Yeah.
fans, yeah,
Mhm.
the fans, nobody knows about. It's between them. That's what's special about sport and being in that arena. Super cool. Yeah.
There's a lot of high performers, high level coaches that are listening to this podcast. I don't think like average coaches or average type of work ethic people are listening to this podcast. So I'd be curious to ask somebody like you that's been 16 years at FSU. You've been at the top for the entire time. For when you're at the top, it comes with a unique set of challenges. Maybe people think like, oh, you're at the top, must be nice, easy. By the way, must be nice. The three words I hate most. Just a side note.
Yeah.
I'm curious, coach, when you have a winning percentage, I think I calculate like 78% when you're in the dugout. It's incredible. My math might be wrong, but something around there. I would love to know, what are the challenges of being the most successful team or successful program? Is it something like fighting complacency, or is it more something along lines of managing expectations, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, I would say managing expectations is probably the biggest part, because you get a fan base that's incredible, but like all of a sudden they expect, that this every year is a different team, and I think that's why we number our teams because team 41 is going to be different, team 42. And we talk about that a lot. And I talk to our fan base about that. Your administration, your conference, like every, of course that's just normal human nature, that side of it. So expectations become a conversation, So how do we get into, and this is why I'm so big on the transformational side of things, because execution to me is to be able to replace expectation, right? If we can execute at the high level that we want to be at, then expectations are the byproduct of it. But your players come in and they see this like, trophies everywhere and, people talking about win a championship and go to the World Series and I already booked my ticket. Expectation looms. So that's all they hear about. But then we come in and all we're talking about is execution of the process. And here it is laid out. So, we lay out from our core values to our vision for the whole season. We talk about it in the fall pretty intensely. So then it becomes about how am I executing daily, the gate mindset. So when all of a sudden the expectation from the outside and even us, we want to be those places, but we know that the execution daily has got to be there or else we're never going to meet the expectation. So I think that is what, really gets on people. It's just when your program can collaborate the two together, it doesn't become anxiousness and it doesn't become this the thing I have to produce, it becomes more of I get to and I'm excited. Like we can flip all those narratives to, man, I'm doing it right now. Just fall back on your training, fall back on your training, fall back on your training. And to me, that isn't chapter 12. Like, every team is different. So the execution for some teams may be team camaraderie. The execution for another team may be experience. The execution for another team, maybe we need to be hit better. You know what I mean? Like how you as a coach have to figure out what the execution piece is to get to the level of the expectation is kind of probably in the sauce of what you need to do as a staff. But I think that's where you start to manage that you can start to have fun mid-season when you figure out who you are.
And so much of that is, inside or outside of our control. We talk about a couple different things. What can you control? What can't you control? The execution part is in our control. And then what I'm hearing also too, coach, is it's a lot of process over outcome. Like, hey, this is what
Yes.
we want to do. Maybe we'll talk about it for a moment, and then that's it. And let's just focus on today, because when we focus on today, our future will take care of itself. Is that kind of a
Yeah.
message that you guys are repeating too?
Yeah, the today is your career, so like, and our strength coach always talks about 10 toes down. That's her thing. Like, it's 10 toes down. So we are where our feet are right now. That's all we can do is what we are right here. So don't look in the future and don't worry about the past. 10 toes down, be about it right now. So I think it's a common language here for sure. And we even our player performance coach, Ellie Cooper, who played here, which is really cool. She played, but she went away for a couple of years, got a little feel from the outside world and came back and has brought in so much knowledge. But we do a life calendar, like from 1 to 80. Softball is like this big, in your life, right? So like, man, like if you can be in it right now and all in it right now and be 10 toes down right now, what can you learn here that's going to affect all of this? So if you can see big picture and like, it just brings the joy out in what we have ahead of us. And I think it's really cool that she brings that perspective to us.
I like asking coaches to fill in. It's one of my favorite fill in the blanks. I'm curious to hear what you would say.
Mm.
It goes like this: if I want my team to be blank, I need to be blank. It's a great question for
Mm.
coaches out there. I'm just curious, what would you say if I want my team to be blank? I need to be blank. What would you insert there?
Get consistent. If I want consistency, I have to be consistent. So I can't ask them to do something that I'm not doing daily.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is there something that comes to mind when you say that consistency? Is it like my attitude and effort? Is it how I show up? Is there a specific part that's like I got to be consistent here, or is it really just all encompassing?
I think it's just showing up. I think that in life in general, right? Like do what you say and say what you do. Like it's really we have a thing we say huda hootie, how you do anything's how you do everything, So like if you're one of those people that say it and you put it on a wall but you don't follow it up, then and if I'm one of those coaches that does that, then the team's going to do that. So again, tying into what goes down the leash comes up the leash. And so I just think that that's really important. Like if I'm going to be consistent here and I can hear, listen to your players do an interview, listen to your players how they talk to each other. Like if what you believe and what you say, all of a sudden they're gonna say that in an interview, it becomes part of your family, it becomes part of your core values, right? So if I'm talking about consistency and I'm talking about them showing up every day and I'm talking about having a good mental approach to the game, they don't always have to be happy and cheery, but a good mental approach to the game. I've got to be that, or else it's if if your coaches aren't doing it, like why would they do it? So I just think consistency is huge on that.
What's your process, coach, like? And I don't know if this has happened to you or not, or maybe it's just advice for coaches that are going through this. What's your advice for a coach out there who might be struggling because there's two girls on the team who are getting along, and he or she is worried because it could affect the entire team. Like right now, it's not a huge deal; it's just these two. But hey, I'm really trying to protect the program and the culture here. You don't have to obviously go into names or anything like that, but what's the advice or what have you learned in your experience when two of your players just aren't getting along?
Yeah. Um, I mean, have it a ton. Like you can't get 30 humans staying together on a mission so long and not have, first I would say this. You're gonna have uncomfortable moments. If you're doing things right, you're pushing buttons and people are gonna get frustrated. And I think on staff too, like, I mean, there's times where we can shut this door as a staff and get after it. But to me, that yellow ball or the soccer ball or the basketball or the football, that is what's brought everyone together. Like our team did not pick their teammates. I did. So the yellow ball brought everyone together. Now, as we get into this, we're going to dive into some really uncomfortable things as we go along if we want the end goal that we say we want. So our core values to me is just how we're going to talk to each other and that's how we're going to live. So we really dive into what family means, what smart means, what our core values are. When we start to have some issues, and I think sometimes when coaches have issues too, is when their best players aren't getting along or their best players, because then
Yeah,
they're like, oh man, I can't say anything to the best player they're producing. And then
right.
the rest of the team's like, oh man, like this best player is getting away with everything. So like
Yes.
you have to identify on the get-go, like we are all living above the line. This is our standard. You're not any different. But I think for me, I am one of those people that I'm going to give one, two, three chances at things because I do think that everyone comes from different backgrounds and especially sometimes freshmen to seniors. I always remind our juniors and seniors, like, you've got to have a little grace right now. And if you trust me as your leader, you know that I'm having really good conversations with how we're going to live in this organization. So there's probably a little grace given, on the freshman side of things. Then there's a little grace given maybe, but like when you're not in this program anymore, you have been talked to and you have been led, and then you're just deciding not to be a part of it. If I have two players not getting along, I am a big like, hey, come in, sit down, let's talk about it. And when we talk about it, we're going to talk about the vision of like not you and you, it's like the program, right? That you signed up to be part of this program, and this is how we're going to live. And something's not jiving right now. Let's dive into the big picture because I'm not here to talk about how you live your life off the field. And I'm not here to judge things that I'm not a part of it. Sometimes that's really hard, right? Like you hear things, it has to be like what's in front of you, right? Like if you get in the he said, she said, it's a really tough world to be in. So yeah, bring it in, address it, let's talk about it. And then let's talk about how we're going to live that and what we see moving forward. So body language, like perception becomes reality a lot of times. And I think body language can send a lot of messages. And so, I'm pretty big on like, I see that. What is that? Let's talk about it. So I don't let a lot slip in conversations to build relationships, to have moments to, just any little like thing like an eye glance, yeah, everyone's been there with body language, and then we just talk about it. Like what's the if we're going to sign up for this team, let's talk about what I'm perceiving right now. Like you're not happy. I'm perceiving you're not happy. Are you not happy? Let's talk about why you're not happy, and a lot of kids sometimes don't even know they're giving it off. And then if we don't say anything, then they don't change it. And then we're just going to assume that they have a bad attitude. But in reality, they're just giving off something that no one's ever talked to them about. So I think that's just a big one. Like address it. I have private shut the door conversations one-on-one. And then I tell them after the conversations, now address it in front of everybody else. So anytime I'm on the field and I'm like, DJ man, let's turn it around right now. And the whole team like knows right away, like, oh, they've already had a conversation about this. And then you turn around and be like, yep, coach, we're good. Then we just raise the whole thing up, right? But if I'm gonna call you out without even having a conversation with you, I didn't respect the opportunity to have a conversation to find out what it is. Because sometimes it's not sport, it is life that's kicking you down, and we need to kind of have a conversation about that. So I think relationship is the big part of those things.
Oh, what a great little 3-minute masterclass on having difficult conversations, because it's going to happen, right? At some point or another, we're going to
Yeah.
face something where people,
Yeah.
whether it's guys or girls, we're going to have it. And so having a
Yeah.
process, and you can either pay tax now or you can pay tax later. And so let's get
Yeah.
after this right now. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't get a chance to ask people of your kind of stature this kind of a question. So I'm very curious. And I'm going to send whatever you say to the athletes I work with here. I think it's an important question that needs to be asked more often. Coach, when you are recruiting athletes or you're going to living rooms of athletes, if that's still even a thing with all the stuff that's going on with
Yeah.
recruiting now, what are you looking for when you're trying to search out who the next crew is coming into FSU? What is important to you?
So I ask this question a lot because, at our camps, I always talk with the parents, because the poor parents, they come to camp and they're just spending all this money and time trying to get after this vision of college athletics. And I always say, hey, you guys, what do you think that we're out here looking for? And everyone like, and you could even do this together, like, oh, good attitude, good teammate, da da da. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but like skill, like wins. Let's go transactional off the get go. Like, let's be real. I can go out and get a bunch of great kids, but if we can't play at the level that we're at to do transactionally what we need to do, like that's the reality of the world. So I'm going to be real with you right now. Like I'm going to go watch these kids take some ground balls and hit a little bit, and there's going to be a couple of them that raise from the rest in our world of where we need to be, right? Then we start to pull the onion back. Then it's the attitude, the academics, all those things. But you've got to get to the level of where you're trying to go to compete at that level. And then the separators become all the things that everyone says in the beginning. But I think a lot of people miss there is a huge transactional side to the business world that we're all in. And when you want to be a national champion or you want to be the elite level of whatever sport you're in, there is a skill set that's got to be able to play there, right? Wrong or indifferent, it's got to happen. Then we decide the kind of transformational world we want to be in. So then I decide what kind of culture Florida State softball wants to have. And if I got 6 shortstops I'm looking at, of those 6, someone's going to be a little bit different that fits in our arena. And, to me, that's always been people that want to be here. Because when you walk in and you get recruited, the red carpet rolls down. But when you're here for 4 years getting after a mission, it's going to be tough. So relations, wanting to be in the spot that you're going to be in, because when the times get tough, you want to be there and you're going to go back to that feeling. You're going to be a grinder and get through it. So, a bit of a blue collar mindset. So, but I think that the transaction in the beginning is like skill sets. Can you play? Boom. Then we raise that up and then we get after all the deeper conversations from there.
I'd imagine sometimes that can be difficult. I mean, I'm just thinking about you. You got 6 people in front of you, and that can sometimes be difficult. I think in the recruiting process, it's kind of a dance. Like I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me. It's kind of an interview going both ways a
Yeah.
little bit. I'd be curious, is there a question that you like to lean on when you're really trying to identify? I got 6 here, and you're kind of in this interview process, if you will. Is there like a question that you like to lean on and just be like, I'm curious, and you're maybe looking for a specific answer or something that kind of separates people?
Yeah, no, I don't think, I don't have a recruiting checklist. Everyone's different and everyone's coming for different reasons. And, I think over time, I'm sitting in a room right now with all the posters, all the kids that have played here, and like they all have grown up in their own way. So I think if you really want to be at a spot and you fit our mold, like we're pretty comfortable as a staff that we're going to grow you as a human and as a ball player. And so to me, it's the desire and the want to get after it, starts to separate. And sometimes I am different in my recruiting approach in the sense that like, man, if you don't pick us, awesome. You only get 4 years to go play. Like it doesn't hurt my feelings. Like, I truly believe the ones that are here are the ones that want to be here and we're going to get after it and we're going to give our best, to get after it. And so, I just think there's too much energy wasted sometimes on that side of it. And, it's like, you decide to be here. We want you to be here. Let's go, versus, oh, she didn't pick us. She didn't pick us. She didn't pick us. Like, no, she picked somewhere else. It's gonna be great for her. Go do it. Like, you only get 4 years and there's so much life after that. So let me pour into the ones that want to be here and let's give to this program and try to be as great as we can be. So I think that's a little bit, I don't get too deep into it. And I just think that we get special people. And the cool thing for me is we get so many alumni that come back to this program and they pour into the ones that are currently here. And that's to me the special sauce of like, if you want to live family and you see family and family like really wants to pour into family, like how cool is that? So my job sometimes, I wouldn't say gets easier. But like I have so many people to pull from to help us continue to build because they're all wanting to be a part of it, you know? And I love that part.
I have two final questions for you. In my preparation, as I said in the beginning of the show, I talked to a lot of people that are, a couple people that are in your inner circle, and one of them is Brian Kane. You guys go back quite a ways. I said, Brian, what Coach Lonnie's done many things. She's got a lot of strengths. What do you think is her biggest strength? And he said it didn't even drop any sort of a hesitation. He goes, it's her work ethic. He goes, it's unmatched. He said, in my 20 years of working with teams at all levels, traveling the country, working with the best of the best, he said, Coach Lonnie is the hardest worker I have ever worked with. It's insane. I say that one because I want to pick your brain on it, but also I thought I worked hard until I met Brian Kane. And 3 years ago, I
Mm,
had a chance to kind of be around him and watch him, and this guy just goes and goes and goes. And just
mm,
being around that has changed my life. I say that because I think a lot of people listening, they think they work hard. We all kind of think we're working hard. But then you get around
mm,
somebody like a Brian King, like a coach right here, and you're like, holy crap, it's way different. So walk
mm.
me through a little bit. Like, what's that like to hear that? And why do you think he said that? And what does it mean to have insane work ethic at your level?
Um, it's funny. You don't know. I've been here 16 years. Like I don't know any other programs. So it's like I think sometimes when you get into it, I don't know if I'm a good coach. You don't know if you're, you know what I mean? Like you don't know because you don't get to get out and see other programs and see what it's like. So when someone says something like that's been to other places, I'm like, wait a second, other people don't do this too. Like I'm just like you. I don't even really know. I just know what we do. And I try to get to the end of every season and reflect on it. And my friend Tim Cousins, who I went to school with at OU, and he coaches with the Orioles now, and he always gave me that advice, like get to the end of the season, take some time, and then go back and relive the season. Watch some video clips, get after the season, and then give yourself a good idea of like, man, what was good, what wasn't so good, and then give yourself a game plan moving forward. So I've always been relentless at end of season. I always meet with every player. I meet with every staff member. I meet with administrators. What was good, what wasn't good, right? Like, let me get a good feel for what you thought went well, what didn't go well. And then over the summer, I'm going to figure out how to be better to continue to grow and get better. And so in that summertime, then I'm really pushing the buttons to be like, man, I need to be a better communicator, or I need to have a better idea of finances. Like, again, I'm the CFO, CEO, right? Like, so I'm not only trying to build a softball program, I'm trying to build a good financial base for our program. I'm trying to build growing our program, more TV time, more coverage. I'm trying to grow international softball. I'm trying, so like I have a lot of buckets. So it does keep me pretty busy in areas I want to go, but that fills my bucket. So when people say I work too hard, which I got a lot of that, man, you work too hard, you need to take time off. But like, I love this. So I don't know, for a long time, I was embarrassed that I'd work till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone that. Like, that's embarrassing. To later be like, man, I'm so lucky that I love what I do. And I love coming in on Saturdays. And I love it where some people are just like, man, when is 4 o'clock on Friday? Because I am over my job. So I think over time I've flipped my experiences to be like, I'm probably one of the super lucky ones that I am immersed in trying to be better every year and trying to be better for the team to be better. And um, so it's just funny you say that because I don't really know any different, but there's so many areas that our game is growing right now, like analytics. I'm super intrigued on that. Body movements coming into our game a lot more, super intrigued on that, which means you got to carve out time to learn and get better. And it makes long days and late nights. But I'm a pretty happy human and I really am grateful for what I get to do.
In my time getting to know you, and also just working with coaches mostly in the Midwest, I think personally that's the number one skill, if you will, of the best is yes, you got to know your X's and O's and all that stuff. But to me, what it
Mhm.
really comes down to, what I see again, just my personal experience, it's the coaches that are eager and hungry to continue to learn and they don't get
Yeah.
complacent and they hire somebody like me or Brian Kane or somebody to come in and say, hey, what do you see here? I'm not sure. Like, and they're looking for help instead of just being like, no, I'm good. I'm one of the best in the business. I don't need anything else. It's that constant lifelong learning. And to you and I, it's so obvious. Like I say that, and I'm like, why the hell wouldn't you do that? Like, what's the
Mhm.
alternative? But to me, I really believe, I know I hate to just pigeonhole into one thing, but if I were to sign it on the line, I'd say it's the people that are lifelong learners that are the best of the best.
Mhm. Yep.
Cool. Let's go to the last
Yeah.
piece. Last question here.
Yeah.
What piece of advice do you have to high school coaches out there who are listening to this conversation today? What's a piece of advice that you wish perhaps all high school coaches knew, whether it be a softball coach or any other sport? What do you know now that maybe you wish you knew then, specifically in the high school arena?
Mm. Um, I mean, our game has changed so much, right? It's just constantly changing. But I've always gone back to, and I do get a lot of emails and a lot of people asking questions about, how to get your teams to do certain things. But the reality is like you want to make complex as simple as you have. And I would say like I want to get simplex, right? I want things to be simplex. Like it is so simple to play a game of catch. It's so simple to cuts and relays. It's so simple to throw a strike. It is, but things get really complicated. And the more expectation we put on things, the more complicated things get. So really, I've always been a big fan of 80%. It's like, man, my practice every day is going to be, can we play a game of catch at a high level? That's 80% of what we do on the softball field. The 20% things that a lot of people worry about, if you can be more consistent more often, you're going to be better down the line than trying to put everything into your 6 weeks of preparation. So when the game gets super complex, keep it simple on that side of it. And I know it's not easy to say, but I'm pretty big at laying out my master plan for the season. And I really dive into how many practices I have, how many hours I have. When you start to really look at it, how much are you putting towards the simple part of the game that you want and keeping the thing? A game of catch, pretty clear objectives of what we want to do. If we get really good at that, then we could start to dive into another 10%. But so just trying to keep as simple as possible. So when the complexity comes, you go back to the simple things of the game of just taking a deep breath. Here we go. Good game of catch. Field a ball, throw a ball. So I think that as a young coach, you look at all these things that people can do, analytics, pitch calling, first and thirds, bunt defenses, yada, yada, all this stuff. Like, man, what is the thing? Simply, can we play a game of catch? Can we catch a ball? Can we field a ground ball? Can we throw a ball? Like that simple. And like as that starts to get complex, later into the season, it's that simple for you guys to do. So yeah, I know it's not that easy, but like I think you can really get forward thinking and your team, they're 15-year-olds, they're 14-year-olds, they're dealing with a lot in life. And you just want to keep it as simple as possible.
Cool advice. You didn't know this, but yesterday, like I said, I interviewed Carrie Walsh Jennings. I asked her the same question to end the podcast in a more of a volleyball sense, and she said almost the exact same thing as you. She said, work on footwork, work
Yeah.
on footwork, work on footwork. Back to the fundamentals, get really
Yeah.
good at. And it was just so cool to see two different sports, two different people. You guys agree on pretty much the same idea there. Very cool. Coach, this has
Yeah.
been so much fun. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Now I know and I can see why everybody loves you and why you're one of the best in the business. How can my listeners best support you and Florida State softball?
Yeah, no, I think to me, the support of the sport itself, right? Like it's an incredible game. So those softball people, but sports people, and you'll just love your kids. They're all coming from different backgrounds. And I think the happier human, especially in this mental health world and social media world, like love your kids because it's going to grow the games that we're all a part of. And, of course, softball is a special one to my heart, but I just see the anxiousness come in because everyone's trying to get to somewhere that looks like it's incredible. Everything is hard work. And if you love what you do daily, the outcome, the byproduct is going to be getting to where you need to be or you want to be. So, yeah, so just keep loving it.
Awesome. Well, you got another Seminole fan here. I got to come out and watch a game. Thanks again for taking the time. This was a lot of fun.
Love that. Ellie would love to see you too. So thank you very much, EJ.